Hello, I'm a 3D artist, and I can't draw, but I try my hardest. And despite lacking those skills, digital and traditional art continues to inspire and fascinate me. So much so that I frequently adapt 2D art to the third dimension, especially from artists who inspire me. Green Povo, the artist who originally designed these two characters, creates their art using both digital and traditional means, and as you might expect, all their art is touched by beautiful shades of green. Green Povo has two main recurring character designs. One I'm not sure has a name, so I'll just refer to them as Povo. The other character is a creature called a Gabo, which instead of being a singular individual, is actually a species of creature. So I sorted all my references, analysed their designs, and then got to modelling, and it did not start well. I was confident in the early stages of the modelling process, mostly due to the simple shape of the legs and feet, but the further up the body I modelled, the more things fell apart. Some of the early drafts I sculpted were the things of nightmares, but I eventually got to a point I was happy with, yet something wasn't quite right. Povo looked strange with viewing them from the front, and I couldn't quite find a way to add eyes either. After getting some second opinions from friends, I managed to fix the model. It turns out I gave them a bit too much of a neck and didn't smooth out their shoulders properly. After making those adjustments, I made some eyes that fit the model and suited the design. Then it was onto the rigging, which is quite simple. For those who don't know much about rigging 3D models, let me break it down for you. The character rigs I make use armatures, which store bones. Bones are used to pose the model by moving the mesh of the model. Before you create any poses though, you first have to choose how the mesh and bones interact using something called weight painting. Imagine weight painting as using invisible glue to stick the mesh onto the bones without either ever touching each other. For example, I can put the glue in a place that makes sense, such as gluing the arm bone to the arm mesh, or I can glue the arm bone to the leg, which makes 0 sense. The warmer the colour, the stronger the glue. Povo's rig only required 75 bones, a lot of which were in the hands and axolotl-like gill thingies. The reason why the gills are filled with so many bones is so I can procedurally sway and bend them using something called damp track modifiers. I chose not to add this effect to the tail as I wanted more control over it, and it didn't look like it would sway in the same way as the gills anyways. Across the many iterations of Povo, I attempted to animate some walk cycles, and it was a bit of a struggle. I wanted to improve the way I animated footwork and upper body movement before I started any big animations, so I animated and animated until I was more confident. Then it was on to modelling the next character. Gabo is the main character that inspired me to create the animation from the intro. Gabos are creatures whose designs are inspired by numerous animal-like features. Depending on the specific reference, Gabos often have long arms and torsos, but short legs in proportion to their body. I appreciate this style of creature design in the same way I appreciate Rainworld creature designs, such as the reindeer, which is just a strange deer with a rabbit's head, spider legs, and strange blobs. The most notable aspects of Gabo's design are the hair and tail, which flow in an elegant manner. The reason why I wanted to adapt it to 3D was because how on earth do you make that hair flow like that in 3D? Not to mention the blobs which come out of it and the pieces of hair appearing and disappearing too. Well, at around the same time I found Green Povo's animation of a Gabo, Blender released a new update which included a new way to subtly blend two objects together. So I thought I might give that a try, and no, it unfortunately didn't work how I wanted it to. Not only did it not blend properly, but it wasn't very blobby either. So I experimented a little further, and I found a way to create the hair blobs, but at the cost of my patience and the computer's lifespan. Rigging the body was simple enough, although the feet of this character are posed a little differently compared to usual since Gabos are digitigrade as opposed to Povo who is plantigrade. Weight painting the arms was a little bit of a struggle, but then I realized I shouldn't be T-posing the model, I should be A-posing it instead, and just like that, all my problems vanished. On top of helping with weight painting, the A-pose helped relax Gabo's shoulders, since they are often found slouching in a lot of the references I used. Like Povo's gills, Gabo's tail is full of bones with damp track modifiers, which allows their tail to do funky flowy stuff. I have no clue how much time I've wasted just moving them around like this, but it was worthwhile. All this totals to 88 bones and the body's rigged. The hair, however, was not rigged in such a simple manner. The hair is made up of two different armatures, both of which are parented to the body's armature. One of the hair armatures controls the main piece of hair, allowing me to do basic poses with it, and is made up of 34 bones. The other armature is used to control some of the finer details of the hair, such as the blobs, and is made up of 14 bones, all totaling to 136 bones. Now for the hair blobbiness. The hair is made up of a flat plane which then connects to what is effectively the shell of the head. It has some stringy bits on the side as well as some random dots used to create smaller blobs. What causes the hair to turn from this boring shape into this animation here are Blender's built-in modifiers, which help adjust the model in specific ways. The first two modifiers are the armatures I mentioned before, which control how the hair deforms. The next modifier is a simple subdivision surface modifier, which is used to make the hair smoother and give it more detail for the later modifiers to work off. The next modifier is a solidify modifier, which is used to give the hair thickness. Now this next modifier is where the magic truly happens, the remesh modifier. I originally wanted to avoid using this modifier since it can cause some performance issues and lead to limitations down the line, such as causing the line art to look a bit rough around the edges of the hair. The remesh modifier is really good at joining different parts of the same object together in the exact way I wanted. It creates a gloopy effect as things get closer or further from each other, which is a really useful way to animate blobs. After that, I used a simple smooth modifier to remove any defects in the hair and remove the weird emphasis on the vertices. However, I did lie a bit. During the animation process, I added yet another armature, but instead of controlling the mesh directly, the bones control a lattice, which then controls the hair. I created this lattice specifically to help with adding more secondary animations to the character. This brought the total amount of bones up to 141. It might be the silliest rig I have ever created, but it works. Somehow. After I set up Gabo's rig and hair modifier stack, I made a simple looping hair flowing animation. To better match the style of the reference animation, I animated on 3s. As I did the animation, I adjusted a few aspects of the rig, namely the stringy bits on the side of the head and how they were controlled. Once all that was done, it was time to create the big animation. First, I imported the two character models into a fresh project file. It was satisfying just seeing them next to each other for the first time, exuding an air of whimsy to an otherwise empty scene. Then I modeled the table, anything on it, and everything around it. These objects took me about an hour to fully model and texture. After that, I set up the camera, gave it some simple animations, and then blocked out the character poses. At this stage, Gabo picking up Povo made them look like a giant stuffed animal. With almost everything blocked out, it was time to focus on the animation. The process of animating this roughly 26-second scene took about 16 hours, but I got very distracted at this point in the project. Throughout that time, I was adjusting the rigs, fixing the weight painting, and replacing the blocked out animations. Once the first pass of animation was completed, I showed it to some friends and fixed a bunch of the core animation poses, and added more subtle details. When Povo was jumping into Gabo's arms, it originally looked like Povo was drop kicking the hell out of Gabo. I also drew a mini Gabo to put on the piece of paper, which took a surprising amount of effort to do. Something I've really come to appreciate when creating art is how important finishing touches can be. Throughout a few of my projects, especially this one, people have suggested that I add cross-hatching to the models, just like in the references I used. There are a seemingly infinite number of ways to cross-hatch and hatch in 2D, but not a lot of them work well with a 3D camera. Regardless, they aren't very common in animation and could be quite jarring if done wrong. After a bit of experimenting, I landed on something quite subtle. I drew a cross-hatch pattern which was repeatable, and then laid the texture over the models. Rather than acting as a texture itself, the cross-hatching acts as a binary value. Wherever the cross-hatching is wide is where the hue and saturation shifts occur. These notes here are just how the colours are changed, and the white in the cross-hatching tells it, yes, you can change the colour there. I especially enjoyed experimenting with the different overlapping hues, as it added a lot of variety to each object's texture. To make it animated, I just rotated the image every few frames. YouTube isn't the biggest fan of these fine details, so the cross-hatching will be even more subtle when I upload this, but it's more noticeable when the camera is facing towards the illustration near the end of the animation. Then I cleaned up some of the secondary animations and rendered all 324 frames. I'm quite happy with how this fan art turned out, although I think I struggled to perfect the proportions, so I had to change the design of Povo a little, but I think it works. I thoroughly enjoyed doing the silly little animations too, since I get to use the models more. Because no Gabos are the same, I might create some more models and animations of them later down the line, and I'll be sure to upload those time lapses somewhere. Speaking of which, I recently made a playlist with all my time lapses, and anyone who's interested can take a look at them. It includes some projects I probably won't turn into videos, and a sneak peek into projects I will turn into videos. Recording time lapses for 3D stuff is kinda difficult since I'm rarely looking at the scene from a single angle, but I'll find a better way to do it in the future. Once I finished the main animation, I found an illustration of both Povo and Gabo together, something that I somehow didn't find until I already finished the project. It's kind of silly, but I love it, and I believe I did the character designs justice. On another note, thank you for everyone who has decided to support me. I absolutely plan on making more projects like this, so feel free to stick around. Learning how to animate in 3D has been a lot of fun so far.